We trust crowds. We trust lit streets, familiar bars, friends standing next to us. A night out feels safe precisely because it's public, surrounded by noise, people, movement. No one's paying attention to you specifically, and that feels like protection. But anonymity works both ways. The same crowd that makes you invisible also hides the person watching you. The same loud music that drowns out your conversation means you don't hear someone listening. The same busy sidewalk full of rideshares and taxis means no one questions an extra car pulling to the curb. The 5 people in tonight's stories went out expecting an ordinary evening. Every one of them got something else, and the danger didn't come from the dark. It came from someone standing right there in the light. Story 1. The rideshare that wasn't theirs. I had my phone in my hand. The app was open. The ride was confirmed, and I still got into the wrong car because everything about it seemed right. That's the part that keeps circling back, not the fear, not the moment we got out. The fact that I had every tool I needed to protect myself, and I didn't use a single one because the situation felt too normal to question. Let me go back about 2 hours. It was my 27th birthday, a Saturday in late September. My friend Becca and I had gone downtown to a cocktail bar called Lola's, a second-floor place in a converted warehouse near the river. We'd originally planned for a group of 6, but cancellations had whittled it down to just the 2 of us. Honestly, I preferred it. Becca's been my closest friend since freshman year of college. A smaller night meant real conversation instead of shouting over music and managing logistics. We arrived around 8:30. The place was crowded, which I'd expected Saturdays always are. We found 2 open seats at the far end of the bar, ordered cocktails, and talked for the next 2 hours about everything and nothing. Work drama, her sister's engagement party, whether I should renew my lease or find a cheaper place farther from downtown. Easy, comfortable stuff. Around 10, I stepped outside to call my mom. She'd sent me a birthday text that morning, and I'd only replied with a heart emoji, which made me feel guilty. Lola's entrance opens onto a side street, quieter than the main road, with a few smokers gathered near the door and a couple leaning against the building a little farther down. I called, talked to her for maybe 8 minutes, wished her good night, and went back inside. When I got back, Becca had already closed our tab. She was tired, I was tired, and we'd both had enough to drink that driving was off the table. I pulled up the rideshare app and requested a car. The screen showed a driver named Marcus, silver Toyota Camry, 4.97 stars, estimated arrival 8 minutes. I showed Becca the confirmation, and she nodded. We headed downstairs and stood near the curb, about 15 feet from the entrance. The street was busier now, other bars had let out, and small groups were scattered along the sidewalk waiting for their own rides or drifting toward parking lots. Every 30 seconds, another sedan or SUV would slow down near the curb. A name would be called out a window or checked on a phone, and a group would pile in. Silver cars, black cars, white cars. Half of them looked the same in the dark. People milled between the vehicles, partially blocking the plates, leaning down to peer through passenger windows, stepping back when a car wasn't theirs. It was a slow-moving mess of headlights and shouted names, the kind of scene where you could watch a specific car arrive and still not be sure which one it was by the time you walked over. Becca was on her phone texting someone, and I was watching the app's little car icon crawl toward our location. Then Becca looked up and said loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, "Danielle, check the app again. It's your birthday, so I'm not letting you walk home." I laughed and said something like, "He's close, 5 minutes maybe." A normal exchange. I didn't think about who might be listening, because why would I? About 2 minutes later, a silver sedan pulled up not directly in front of us, but slightly ahead near a fire hydrant. The passenger window was down. Propped against the dashboard was a small laminated card with Danielle written on it in dry erase marker, the kind of card you could wipe clean and reuse. The driver leaned toward the window, mid-40s, white, short hair, clean-shaven, dark polo shirt. "Danielle, birthday girl," he said. He smiled. "Happy birthday. Hop in." Here's why I didn't check. The name was right. The car was silver. The birthday comment tracked because Becca had just said it out loud, and I assumed he'd heard her. Or maybe the app had some kind of note. In a pickup area with a dozen similar cars and people calling names through windows, this felt like just another rideshare arriving. Not perfect, just normal enough. We got in the back seat. He pulled away from the curb, merged into one-way traffic, heading east. He glanced over his shoulder as he merged and said, casually, "Which part of town are we heading to?" I said, "East side, over near Riverside," meaning the general neighborhood, not my street. He nodded like that confirmed what his navigation already showed, but I noticed for the first time that he didn't have a phone mounted on his dash or windshield. No navigation app running. No blue GPS line on a screen. Most rideshare drivers have their phone mounted right there, tracking the route in real time. His dashboard was bare, except for the laminated card. I told myself maybe he used earpiece directions. Maybe he'd memorized the route from the app before we got in. Maybe his phone was in the center console. Each explanation was thin on its own, but together they formed just enough of a cushion to keep me from saying anything. Then there was the smell. The car reeked of cigarettes, not a faint trace, but a deep, embedded staleness soaking into the upholstery. The kind of smell that belongs to a car whose owner smokes in it every day. The app profile had said, "Clean car, pleasant ride." That rating doesn't belong to a car that smells like this. Now I had two things that didn't match. No mounted navigation, cigarette smell in a car rated for cleanliness. Separately, each had a possible explanation. Together, they formed a weight I couldn't ignore. I glanced at my phone. The app was still open, and the real Marcus in his silver Toyota Camry was still 4 minutes away, 6 blocks behind us, heading in our direction. I stared at the screen. The little car icon representing our actual driver was nowhere near us. We were in a car that wasn't in the system, with a driver who wasn't Marcus. I tilted my phone toward Becca. She looked at the screen, then looked at me. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. The driver adjusted his rear-view mirror, and I realized he wasn't checking the road behind us. He was watching us look at the phone. He was heading east on Franklin, toward the general neighborhood I'd mentioned. That's what made it so disorienting. He was driving a plausible route. Not the wrong way, not somewhere obviously suspicious. Just east, steady, quiet. I leaned forward. "Actually, can you pull over up here? My friend isn't feeling well." He didn't respond immediately. He drove another half block. Then, "There's nowhere safe to stop on this block. I'll pull over after the light." The light ahead was green. He went through it, then past the next block. No signal, no slowing down. To my left, Becca was doing something with her hand near the door. I didn't fully register it until later, but she told me afterward. She'd quietly reached for the interior door handle and pulled it. Nothing happened. The handle moved, but the door didn't release. The rear child safety locks were engaged, the kind that disabled the interior handle completely, the kind you set from the outside edge of the door frame when the door is open. They're designed so small children can't open the door from inside. They also mean an adult can't open it either, no matter how hard you pull. It won't work until someone disengages the lock from outside the vehicle. Becca pulled twice, gently, trying not to make noise. The door didn't move. She looked at me. Her face told me everything. Becca said, louder now, "Pull over, right now, please." He glanced at the mirror again. "Almost there." He signaled left and turned onto a street. I recognized it ran behind a warehouse district. Darker, fewer businesses, no pedestrians, not the way home. I dialed 911. I didn't whisper, didn't try to hide it. I said clearly, "We're in a car with someone who is not our rideshare driver. We're heading north on Caldwell, just past Franklin. Silver sedan, 4-door. I gave the first 3 characters of the plate I'd seen when we walked up to the car. It was all I'd caught. The change was immediate. He slowed down, pulled to the curb, and stopped. Then his door opened. For 1 second, I thought he was coming around to confront us. Instead, he walked to the passenger side, opened the rear door from outside, and stepped back without saying anything. The child safety lock still prevented us from opening that door from inside, but the exterior handle worked normally. Becca climbed out first. I moved across the back seat and followed her through the same open door. The driver returned to his seat while I was still speaking to the dispatcher. We walked fast, back toward the lit intersection at Franklin. I stayed on the line with dispatch. The operator told us to stay near a public, well-lit location and not to reapproach the vehicle. Becca flagged down 2 women on the opposite sidewalk, and we stayed near them in front of a convenience store with its lights on and its door open. The sedan had sat at the curb for maybe 15 seconds after we got out, then pulled away and turned right. Gone. While we waited for the patrol car, my phone buzzed. A notification from the rideshare app. Marcus, the real Marcus, was arriving at our original pickup location outside Lola's. He'd been circling, trying to find us. The app showed his car sitting at the exact spot on the curb where we'd been standing 12 minutes earlier. 12 minutes. The fake driver had arrived in that window after I'd requested the ride, but before the real car got there. He'd timed it, or he'd gotten lucky, or he'd watched enough pickups on enough Saturday nights to know that the gap between requesting and arriving is when people stop thinking clearly. The officer took our statements. I gave the partial plate and the physical description. He was straightforward with us. He said 3 characters and a general vehicle description generate too many possible matches, and without a full plate, a clear photo, or physical evidence connecting the car to a specific person, these cases almost never result in an identification. He also said, quietly, that it wasn't the first report like this from the downtown bar district on a weekend night. Becca's husband picked us up. In the days after, I replayed every detail. He'd known my name and that it was my birthday. The only moment that information existed out loud was when Becca said it on the sidewalk. "Danielle, check the app. It's your birthday." He must have been right there. One of the smokers, someone walking past, close enough to hear, anonymous enough to ignore. The laminated card on his dashboard, that's the detail I keep coming back to. It was reusable, dry erase marker on a laminated surface. He had a system. Listen for a name, write it down, pull up in a silver car that looks like every other rideshare on the road, and wait. On a busy Saturday, someone will get in without verifying. I was that someone. I had the app right in front of me. 15 seconds of checking would have changed everything. I don't tell people that as a lesson. I tell them because it's the thing I can't stop being angry at myself about, even though I know the only person who did something wrong that night was him. Some nights, the danger doesn't pull up to the curb. Sometimes it walks behind you at a comfortable distance, patient enough to wait until the crowd thins out. Story 2. Someone followed them from the comedy club. Lauren grabbed my arm on the third-floor landing of the parking garage and said, quietly, almost into my jacket, "He's here again." I looked through the gap in the concrete railing. One flight below, same pace, same green jacket. Third time that night. I stopped making excuses for it right then. Lauren and I drove about 40 minutes into the city to see a late comedy show, a small venue, maybe 300 seats, in a converted theater downtown. The comic was someone we'd been watching clips of, nobody famous, but consistently sharp. We don't get out much without the kids. Her parents were watching them. This was supposed to be our night. We got downtown around 8:15 and pulled into a public parking garage 2 blocks from the venue, one of those structures attached to a mixed-use building, offices up top, a couple of restaurants at street level. No attendant, hourly rate ticket machine at the entrance. I remember pulling the ticket from the machine and noticing the garage was about half full on the 4th level, where we ended up. I parked near the exterior wall between an SUV and a minivan. As we got out, I hit the lock button on the fob, and the car's lights flashed twice. Habit, I always do it. What I didn't do was check whether anyone else was on the level at that moment. There were footsteps somewhere behind us, echoing off the concrete. Impossible to place exactly, but I didn't turn around. Parking garage, people coming and going, nothing to check. We walked toward the pedestrian exit on the far wall, and as we passed through the heavy metal door into the stairwell, I glanced back through the window slit in the door. A man was standing near the payment kiosk on our level, about 40 feet from where we'd parked. Green utility jacket. He appeared to be reading the rate sign above the machine. I didn't think anything of it. That's what the kiosk is there for. We took the stairs down and walked 2 blocks to the venue. The show started on time. It was a good night. Lauren was laughing, really laughing. The kind where she leans forward and grabs my knee. We held hands during the quieter bits. The show let out around 10:45. We filed out the main entrance with the rest of the crowd onto the sidewalk. While Lauren and I stood there deciding whether to get one more drink, I saw a green jacket across the street. Same shade, same utility style. The man was walking in the same direction as the foot traffic, hands in his pockets, not looking at us. I registered it the way you'd register seeing a car the same color as yours mildly, briefly. Downtown on a Saturday night, a couple hundred people within a 2-block radius. Jackets repeat. We decided on one more drink and walked to a bar across the street, a casual place with exposed brick and too loud music. We found a high top near the window. That's where I noticed the man again. He was at the bar itself, 3 or 4 stools from the service area, alone. White guy, average height, mid-30s maybe, the same dark green utility jacket. Nothing remarkable about him, which is exactly what made him register he was perfectly still in a room full of motion. No phone in his hand, no TV overhead catching his eye, just sitting, holding a beer, looking at nothing in particular. I mentioned it to Lauren not as a concern, just as an observation. I think that guy in the green jacket was outside the venue earlier. She looked, shrugged, said downtown is a small loop on a Saturday. She was right. I let it go. We finished our drinks around 11:20 and walked back to the garage. The ground level was noticeably emptier now. Our footsteps echoed off the concrete. We took the stairs because the elevator in that garage was glacially slow. We'd waited over 2 minutes for it on the way down, and I didn't want to stand in a dim elevator lobby. On the second-floor landing, the ground-level stairwell door opened below us. I glanced through the railing gap. Green jacket. I told myself what anyone would. Same area, same garage, same general timing. Coincidence explains 99% of these things. Lauren didn't say anything. We kept climbing. On the third-floor landing, Lauren touched my arm and said, very quietly, without breaking stride, "He speeds up when we speed up." I hadn't noticed. I'd been listening to the echo of his footsteps without analyzing the rhythm, but Lauren had been tracking it. When we'd taken the second flight at a normal pace, his steps matched. When we'd unconsciously quickened on the third flight, his tempo had increased to keep the same distance. We exited on the fourth level. The door banged shut behind us, and the echo rolled through the empty concrete. The level was about a third full, dim overhead lights with that sickly yellowish cast. Pillars every 30 feet. Our car was parked about halfway down the row, against the exterior wall. Then the stairwell door opened behind us. Lauren's hand found my arm. I turned, trying to look natural. Green jacket, standing just outside the stairwell door, phone out, not walking, just standing. I turned back toward our car and pressed the unlock button on my fob. The headlights flashed about 60 feet ahead. That's when I saw the second figure. Someone was leaning against the pillar directly across from our car. Heavy-set, hood pulled up, hands in pockets. Not near any other vehicle. Positioned in the open lane between the rows. A spot where nobody parks and nobody stands unless they're waiting for something specific. I couldn't tell age or gender. The hood and the dim light made it impossible. Lauren saw them at the same moment. She stopped. I stopped. I turned around. Green jacket was closer. He'd cut the distance by half without making a sound, still looking at his phone, still walking toward us at an angle that would put him between us and the stairwell. My brain did geometry, not heroics. One person behind us, one person ahead. Our car between the pillar figure and the wall. Stairwell behind the first man. Elevator lobby on the far side of the level near the opposite stairwell. Ramp down to level 3 to our right. Lauren said under her breath, "Ramp. Go right." She'd already seen it. She was already moving. I followed her. We walked quickly toward the down ramp, not running. Running felt like it would change something, turn a situation that might still be ambiguous into something active. I know that sounds irrational. In that moment, it felt like survival logic. We walked down the ramp to level 3. Footsteps above us, one set, quick. The hooded figure, I couldn't hear at all. Level 3 was nearly empty. 5, maybe 6 cars. But across the far wall, I could see the elevator lobby and a door next to it marked Building Access Lobby. Lauren pointed to it before I even finished scanning the level. She said, "That door, not the elevator. If there's a lobby, there might be a guard." The elevator was an option, but we'd have to wait for it with our backs to the open level, and neither of us wanted to stand still. We moved fast across the open concrete. I kept checking over my shoulder. Green jacket appeared at the top of the ramp behind us, stood there for 5 or 6 seconds, just watching, then turned and walked back up toward 4. We reached the building access door. Unlocked. It opened into a carpeted hallway, office building fluorescent lighting, clean, warm. A completely different world from the garage. We followed it to a small lobby with a security desk. An older guard looked up from his phone. I told him what happened. Tried to be specific, 2 people. One who'd followed us from the venue to the bar to the garage, one waiting near our specific car, the coordinated positioning. He asked a few questions: what level, which stairwell, description of both individuals. Practical questions, no skepticism. Then he picked up his radio and called the building's roving security officer to check level 4. He told us to wait in the lobby. He said if anyone fitting those descriptions came through the building access door, he'd see them, and there was a second guard on the ground floor who could seal the garage pedestrian exit. We waited about 20 minutes. The roving guard radioed back. Level 4 was clear. No one matching either description. No one appeared to be circling the level or waiting near a vehicle. Our car was untouched. The roving guard met us in the lobby, and both guards walked us up to level 4, one in front, one behind. They waited while we got in the car and watched us drive down the ramps and out to the street. On the drive home, Lauren and I pieced it together quietly. The man in the green jacket had been near the payment kiosk on our level when we arrived. He would have seen me lock the car with the fob, seen exactly which vehicle's lights flashed. 5 hours later, he knew where our car was. He'd communicated that somehow, to someone, and the hooded figure was in position when we came back. When I followed up with garage management 2 days later, they told me that the security cameras on levels 3 and 4 had been out of service for several weeks, pending a maintenance contract. They also mentioned that a service door on the ground level 1 that opened from the alley into the garage's utility corridor had been found propped open with a folded piece of cardboard that same weekend. Anyone coming in through that door could access the upper levels through the internal stairwell without passing the ticket machine or appearing on the ground level cameras. I don't know what was supposed to happen at our car. I don't like guessing. I know what the geometry looked like, and I know it wasn't accidental. One person to close the distance behind, one person already in position ahead. Whatever they'd planned, it required us to keep walking straight. Lauren saw the ramp before I did. I want that on the record. She's the reason we changed direction, and changing direction is the reason we're fine. The next story is about a different kind of setup, one that happens in a crowded room, under good lighting, where a stranger assembles a convincing identity from pieces you leave in plain sight. Story 3. The man with the coat check ticket. The bartender told me someone had already picked up my coat using a matching ticket, and for about 3 seconds I just stood there, processing. I was holding my claim stub, number 14, same as when I'd checked it in. The coat and my car keys, zipped into the inside pocket, was gone, and whoever took it had walked up to the counter, handed over a piece of paper with the right number, and walked out wearing my evening like it belonged to them. Let me back up. 5 of us from work went out on a Thursday night in early November, a celebration for surviving a 3-month campaign that had eaten our lives whole. Our manager had basically ordered us to go decompress, so someone suggested this karaoke place about 20 minutes from the office. It was trying hard to be upscale: craft cocktails, a coat check, reservable private rooms, plus a main stage and bar area for walk-ins. The kind of place where the drinks cost $14 and the bathroom has cloth towels. It was cold that night, real November cold, and I was wearing a long wool coat, dark gray, mid-thigh length. My car keys were zipped into the inside breast pocket, which is where I always keep them because my going out bag is too small for a key fob. I got in line at the coat check near the entrance. The line moved fast. One attendant, a college-age girl with a rack of hangers behind her, working quickly. She'd take the coat hang it, tear a paper ticket in half, clip one piece to the hanger, hand you the other. Handwritten numbers in black marker. Quick, efficient, nothing fancy. When she handed me my stub, I glanced at it 14 and shoved it into the front pocket of my jeans. A man was waiting directly behind me in line. I didn't look at him closely. He was tall, wearing a blue button-down under a dark jacket, light brown hair. I noticed him the way you notice anyone standing close to you in a queue peripherally, briefly. He was close enough to have seen my ticket number. He was close enough to have watched the attendant clip the matching half to my coat. I didn't think about any of this until much later. Our group grabbed a table near the bar. There were 5 of us, me, Priya, Josh, Carla, and Adam. We ordered food and drinks and settled in. The place was filling up fast, getting louder by the minute. Josh signed up for karaoke almost immediately. Priya talked me through a situation with her landlord. Normal, easy Thursday night after work stuff. My coworkers used my name constantly. That's just how our group talks. Megan, try this. Megan, did you hear what Josh just said? Megan, your turn to get the next round. In a quiet room, that's nothing. In a loud bar where you're projecting over music, it carries. Around 9:30, my boyfriend Derek texted me asking how the night was going. I tapped out a few responses, told him where we were, mentioned the karaoke, said Priya was on her 3rd drink and getting bold. Then Priya leaned over and asked me to take a picture of her and Adam with her phone. I set my phone face up on the table to free my hands and used Priya's phone for the picture. My screen was visible, Derek's name, his contact photo, a few lines of our conversation clearly readable for about a minute, maybe 90 seconds, before I picked it up again. At some point during the evening, and I have gone over this so many times trying to pinpoint exactly when I went to the restroom. The restrooms were down a short hallway near the coat check, past the end of the bar. To get there, I had to walk within a few feet of the coat check counter. My claim ticket was in the front pocket of my jeans. Visible? Maybe. The stub was small, but it stuck up slightly from the pocket. The number was facing out. Would someone looking for that information be able to see it as I walked past? I think so. I think that's exactly what happened. I got back to the table. The night went on. Around 10:15, I decided to leave. Early meeting in the morning and 3 cocktails was my comfortable limit on a work night. I said my goodbyes, walked to the coat check, and handed over my ticket. The attendant checked the stub, turned to the rack, searched again, turned back to me with confusion pulling at her face. Someone already picked this one up, she said. A guy came like 10 minutes ago, same number. I looked at the stub in my hand. 14, still there, still mine. She described him. Tall, light brown hair, blue button-down. She'd been slammed, she said, a rush of people leaving around 10, all wanting their coats at once. He'd handed her a matching number. She'd pulled the coat. He'd thanked her and left. It had taken maybe 30 seconds. She hadn't questioned it because why would she? The numbers matched. My car keys were in that coat. I went back to my coworkers and explained. They were sympathetic, confused. Everyone assumed it was a mix-up. Someone grabbed the wrong coat. The number system failed, whatever. Priya offered to come with me to talk to the manager. While we were waiting near the host stand, a man walked up to our group. I'd never seen him before, late 30s. Dark jeans, charcoal sweater, calm expression. Almost apologetic. He looked directly at me. Hey, Megan? I said yes. Reflex. Pure reflex. Derek asked me to come check on you. He said you might need a ride home since your coat got taken. I need to explain why I didn't immediately recoil. I was frazzled. My coat was gone. My keys were gone. And I was standing in a noisy bar trying to get a manager's attention. And this man had just said two things that were both true: my name and Derek's name. Together, in the right context, those two pieces of information created an instant sense of legitimacy. My brain wanted to accept it because accepting it would mean someone was helping. But I hadn't told Derek about the coat. I hadn't texted him since earlier in the evening. He didn't know anything was wrong. "How do you know Derek?" I asked. "We work together. Derek works in IT for a financial services company. In 5 years, he's mentioned maybe 4 coworkers to me by name. This man didn't offer his own." "What's Derek's last name?" I said. The man's expression shifted. Not anger, something more like recalibration. Like a salesman who realizes his opening pitch didn't land, and he's deciding whether to try a different angle. "Come on, Megan, he's worried about you. Let me just give you a ride and you can sort out the coat thing tomorrow." Priya stepped forward. She's 5'3", but when she squares her shoulders, she takes up a lot of space. "Who are you?" she said, not a question so much as a wall. The man looked at Priya, then at me, then at the rest of the table, where Josh and Adam had stopped talking and were watching. He held up both hands, palms out. "Just trying to help. Never mind." He turned toward the front door. Not fast, not slow. Just a man leaving a bar. Priya said, "Don't follow him," and grabbed my arm. She pulled out her phone, called Derek, and handed it to me when he picked up. Derek was at home, on the couch, watching TV. He hadn't sent anyone. He didn't know anyone matching the description. He hadn't mentioned the karaoke bar to a single person. By the time I finished explaining what was happening, his voice had gone flat, in that way it does when he's scared, but trying to think clearly. He said, "Don't go to your car. Don't go home. Stay where you are." The manager reviewed what the coat check attendant could remember. The man who'd picked up my coat and the man who'd approached me matched the same description: tall, light brown hair, blue button down. He'd gotten the coat first. Then he'd come back inside to find me. How he assembled the information is at this point not really a mystery to me. He was behind me in the coat check line. He saw my ticket number, saw which coat got hung. He was in the bar while my coworkers said my name a dozen times over 2.5 hours. He walked past our table when my phone was face up with Derek's name and photo on the screen. He may have seen my ticket stub sticking out of my pocket when I walked to the restroom. Duplicating a handwritten number on a piece of cardstock, the coat check used pre-cut paper with marker. Nothing fancy, would take about 30 seconds, and the right pen. He'd gathered everything he needed from the ordinary debris of a normal night out. A name overheard, a boyfriend's name on a screen, a ticket number glimpsed in a pocket. And he'd built something that almost worked. Priya and Josh drove me home that night. Derek was standing outside when we pulled up. The next morning, we called a locksmith and had our apartment locks rekeyed. We had the car dealer reprogram a new key fob. Our apartment address was on the car registration in the glove box, and the key fob had been in the coat. Whoever this man was, he could find my car in the apartment lot, unlock it, and know exactly where I lived. The bar's security cameras covered the stage and the main entrance, but not the coat check area or the seating section near our table. The exterior camera caught a partial image of a man matching the description leaving through the front door, but the resolution wasn't enough for identification. 3 days after that night, I walked to my car in the apartment complex lot and found my coat folded neatly on the hood. The keys were not inside it. The pockets were empty. The coat was clean, almost carefully placed. Whoever left it there had been in my parking lot. They knew which car was mine. Derek and I broke our lease and moved 2 months later. The next story starts with a celebration and an open invitation. It's about what happens when the party you walk into isn't what you were told it was, and the door is harder to walk back through than it was to enter. Story 4. The Afterparty Address. I was standing in the kitchen of a house I couldn't name the address of, holding a cup someone else had poured, surrounded by people I'd met 45 minutes earlier, and it hit me all at once I had no idea where I was. My phone was in a basket by the front door. My friends were scattered in different rooms, and the 3 people who'd brought us here were standing between me and every exit I could see. I should say I was 22. I'd graduated from college that afternoon. If that sounds like an excuse, maybe it is. But I was riding a high that made everything seem like a good idea. And I think the people who invited us were counting on exactly that. The ceremony was in the afternoon. My family came, parents, my sister, an aunt who drove 4 hours. We did dinner at a place near campus, took photos, the whole thing. By 9, my family was heading home, and I was meeting friends. There were 5 of us, me, my roommate Tara, our friend Jordan, a guy named Colin from my capstone seminar, and his girlfriend Natalie. We went to the usual bar near campus, the one that functions as an unofficial graduation night gathering spot. The place was shoulder to shoulder with people our age, all in that same reckless, sentimental mood. Around midnight, we were outside getting air when a group at a nearby table started talking to us. 3 of them 2 guys, 1 woman, all about our age. One of the guys, who said his name was Eli, mentioned they'd graduated from a different program and were heading to an after-party at a rental house about 15 minutes away. He pulled up the listing on his phone. Nice-looking place. 2 stories, big backyard, fire pit. He said there'd be 20 or 30 people, music, the whole thing. He was relaxed, charming, the kind of person who makes a plan sound effortless. We debated for maybe 3 minutes. It was graduation night. None of us wanted to go home. Tara was enthusiastic. Jordan was already saying yes. Colin and Natalie were leaning toward it. I was the holdout, mostly because I was tired from the long day, but Tara said, "Come on, you can sleep when you're dead." And I thought, fine, one more stop. What's the worst that happens? We followed Eli's group in Colin's car. The drive took about 15 minutes on a 2-lane road heading out of the main part of town. The house was at the end of a quiet residential street, porch lights on, cars in the driveway, music audible from outside. It looked like a party. Inside, maybe a dozen people, not 30, but enough to feel real. Music from a Bluetooth speaker, drinks on the kitchen counter bottles, mixers, cups, some people in the backyard around the fire pit. The energy was low-key and warm. It felt legitimate. Maybe 20 minutes after we arrived, the woman from Eli's group, Kira, came around with a wicker basket. "Phones away night," she said, laughing, holding it out like a party game. No screens, no scrolling, just real human interaction. She said it like she'd lifted the idea from some wellness blog. A few people dropped their phones in right away. Tara put hers in. Jordan put his in. It felt like one of those social experiments you go along with because refusing seems rude or paranoid. I put mine in. Kira carried the basket to a console table near the front door and set it down. Colin didn't. He told me later he'd slipped his phone into his jacket's inside pocket instead. He said nothing about it at the time. For the first hour, everything was fine. I talked to a few people, poured myself a drink from a sealed bottle, stood around the fire pit. But as the night went on, small things started snagging my attention. The people at this party didn't know each other. Not casually, not vaguely, they were strangers making first contact conversation. I asked a girl near the fire pit how she knew Eli. I don't, really. He invited us from the bar on Elm Street, a different bar from the one we'd been at. I asked a guy in the kitchen the same question. Same answer, different starting point. Every cluster of guests had been recruited the same way. A friendly invitation from Eli's group at whatever bar they happened to be at that night. Eli, Kira, and the other guy, I never got his name, weren't socializing the way everyone else was. They were positioned. One near the front door, one in the kitchen. Kira circling between rooms. If you weren't looking for it, they just seemed like attentive hosts. Once I started looking, the pattern was obvious. Around 1:30, I went looking for Tara. She wasn't in the main room. She wasn't in the backyard. I went upstairs and found a closed door with music playing behind it. I knocked. A voice I didn't recognize said, "We're good in here." I knocked again, said Tara's name. The door opened. Tara was sitting on a bed with two people I hadn't seen before, one of whom was pouring from a bottle with no label. Tara looked at me with heavy, unfocused eyes and said, "Hey, come hang out." I said, "We need to go." She waved me off. I went downstairs, found Colin near the kitchen, and pulled him aside. I said, "Nobody here actually knows each other. Everyone got invited separately from different bars. This isn't a party, it's a collection." I watched it land on his face. He looked around the room the way you look at a picture after someone tells you there's something hidden in it. He said, "Where's Jordan?" We found Jordan in the backyard, sitting alone in a lawn chair. He seemed foggy, said he felt weird, but couldn't describe how. He'd had maybe 3 drinks, but he looked like someone who'd had 8. He hadn't eaten much that day. It could have been the alcohol and an empty stomach. I couldn't prove otherwise. But I didn't want to wait around testing theories. I told Colin I was getting our phones and we were leaving. He said he'd get Natalie and bring Jordan to the front door. I said I'd go upstairs for Tara. I went to the front door first. The console table was there. The basket was gone. I looked at the empty table for a long moment. The third guy, the one whose name I never learned, was sitting in a chair near the door, scrolling through his own phone. He still had his. He'd never put it in the basket. "Where'd the phones go?" "Kira moved them. Didn't want anyone grabbing the wrong one by accident." "Where'd she move them?" He shrugged. "Ask her." I found Kira in the kitchen. I told her we needed our phones because we were leaving. She tilted her head and gave me this look of mild disappointment. "Already? It's so early. At least stay for—" "I need my phone. They're upstairs in the back room. I'll grab them in a sec." "I'll come with you." She didn't move. "Just give me a minute, okay? I'm in the middle of something." She wasn't in the middle of anything. She was standing in the kitchen holding a cup. I walked back toward the front door. Eli was now standing in the hallway between the living room and the entrance, arms folded, leaned against the wall in a way that was casual, but also directly in the path between me and the door. He said, "Everything cool?" with the kind of smile that's meant to make you feel like you're creating a problem. I said, "We're heading out, just need our phones." "Yeah, Kira's getting those. Just hang tight." Behind me, I could hear Colin's voice upstairs, calm, steady, talking to Tara. I could hear another voice too, someone I didn't know, saying something about how the night was just getting started, how she should stay. And then I noticed something else. two other guests, a guy and a girl I'd spoken to briefly earlier, were standing near the back door, and the girl was saying, almost in the same rhythm I'd been using, "We just want our phones back. We want to leave." The third host was near them, same posture as Eli, same relaxed, unhurried obstruction. Colin came down the stairs with Tara, whose arm was over his shoulder. Natalie was behind them with Jordan. Colin met my eyes, and very calmly, like he was commenting on the weather, said, "I already called. They're on the way." He'd used his phone, the one he'd never put in the basket. Eli's expression changed. Not dramatically, the smile just left. He looked at Colin, then at me, then at the two guests near the back door who'd gone quiet and were watching. Colin said it again, louder this time, to the room. "If anyone wants their phone back, we're leaving right now, through the front door." I don't know if Eli made a decision, or if the moment just passed him. He unfolded his arms and stepped to the side. Not far, maybe a foot. Enough room to pass if you committed to it. I walked through. Colin came behind me with Tara. Natalie guided Jordan. The two other guests followed. And then a third guest. A guy who'd been sitting on the couch looking confused for the last hour, stood up and walked out behind us. We went straight to Colin's car. The two other groups went to theirs. I looked back at the house, once porch light still on, front door open, Eli standing in the frame watching us drive away. Colin had called the local police non-emergency line, not 911, and told them the situation. A house where guests' phones had been collected and withheld, where people who wanted to leave were being discouraged from doing so, where several guests appeared significantly more impaired than their drinking would explain. They said they'd send someone. I recovered my phone 2 days later. An officer called and said they'd been to the house that night, found a basket with 8 devices, and collected them. Several remaining guests had been disoriented about how they'd gotten there, or whose house it was. The rental had been booked under a name that didn't match any of the 3 hosts. Nobody told me whether charges were filed. I asked once, and the officer said it was being looked into. That was the last I heard. Later, I found out that at least 2 other groups at 2 other bars downtown had received the same invitation that night. Eli's group approaching strangers, the rental listing on the phone, the pitch about an after party, all the same script. Whether those groups went, I don't know. I don't have proof of a specific crime. I have a pattern. Strangers gathered from multiple locations, phones removed, drinks controlled, guests separated, exits watched. I don't need to know what the final step was supposed to be. The architecture of the evening tells me enough. Tara doesn't talk about that night. She says she had 3 drinks and felt like she'd had 10. That's all she'll say about it, and I've stopped asking. The last story tonight is the one I almost didn't include, because the person who told it to me had trouble finishing it. It's about a concert, a parking lot, and the space between a text message and the person you think sent it. Story 5. Someone was waiting in the driver's car. I've told this maybe 4 times. Every time I get to the same part and something in my throat just locks, not crying something more physical than that. Like, my body remembers standing in that alley before my brain catches up. The 3 of us, me, Reese, and Danny, went to see a band at a small venue in a part of the city that's still half industrial. New breweries next to old machine shops, gravel lots next to renovated storefronts. The venue was a converted warehouse, good sound, maybe 400 capacity. We'd planned it for weeks. We're all early 30s, known each other since high school. Danny drove, like he always does when we go out. He doesn't drink. We parked on a side street about 3 blocks from the venue, in a stretch behind a closed auto parts store. Streetlights were sparse, one every 100 yards, long pools of dark between them. Danny parallel parked his dark blue Honda Civic next to a chain-link fence. There were a few other cars parked along the same block. It was a legitimate spot, no signs saying otherwise. Danny keeps a small spiral notebook in his center console. Addresses, phone numbers, emergency contacts. He's an analog guy, doesn't trust the cloud, keeps important stuff written down. Inside the front cover, in Danny's neat block print, are our names and phone numbers, mine and Reese's, along with his parents' number and his landlord's. He also keeps his registration and insurance card in the glove compartment, like most people. His home address is on both documents. We walked to the venue. The show started around 8:30. The opener was decent. The headliner was phenomenal, loud, physical, the kind of show where you forget you have a body until the lights come up. Between the opener and the headliner, there was a 20-minute intermission. Reese and I went outside to cool off. The sidewalk out front was packed, people smoking, making calls, getting air. I noticed a few car alarms going off in the distance, which happens in that neighborhood. The streets around the venue were dark and largely unsupervised. Easy pickings during a show, every car guaranteed to be unattended for 2 to 3 hours. During the headliner's set, around 10:15, Danny leaned over and told me he was going to get the car. This was routine. Danny doesn't love crowds, and he always prefers to have the car running at the curb when the show ends so we can skip the post-show rush. He said he'd pull around front and text us. His phone battery had been low all evening. He'd mentioned it once during the opener, said he was down to about 15%, but he figured he had enough to send a text when the car was ready. Reese and I nodded. Danny headed for the exit. About 15 minutes later, I got a text. The number wasn't Danny's. It was a local number I didn't recognize. But the message said, "Hey, it's Danny. Someone smashed my window and grabbed my phone, using a borrowed phone. Street out front is blocked, so meet me in the alley behind the venue, east side. I'm by the loading dock." I showed Reese. He read it twice, then shrugged. We'd seen a delivery truck partially blocking the street out front earlier, so the blocked road detail tracked, and the smashed window part. That neighborhood is known for break-ins. The idea that Danny's phone was stolen explained the unfamiliar number. It all held together in a way that felt unfortunate but plausible. There was something slightly off about the wording, though. Danny would have said, "Phone's gone," not "grab my phone." He would have said, "Out front's blocked," not "street out front is blocked." Tiny differences. The kind of thing you notice afterward and can't forgive yourself for missing. The show ended. Reese and I went out the back exit, a fire door that opened into a short hallway and then into the alley behind the venue. The alley was wide, paved with cracked asphalt, running behind the venue and 2 adjacent buildings. One utility light above a loading dock about 50 feet east through a weak circle of yellowish light. Beyond it, darkness in both directions. We walked east toward the loading dock. I could see a car parked near it, dark-colored sedan, roughly the right size and shape. From 60 feet away, under one bad light, it could have been Danny's Civic. We were maybe 40 feet from the car when Reese stopped walking. He was looking at his phone. "Hold on," he said. "Danny just texted me, from his actual number." Reese turned the screen toward me. A message from Danny's real number, time-stamped 1 minute ago. "Phone finally got enough charge. I'm inside the coffee shop on Mercer. Car got broken into. Where are you guys?" Mercer Street was 1 block north, the opposite direction from the alley. I looked at Reese's phone. Then I looked at my phone, at the text from the unknown number that had told us to come to this alley. Then I looked at the car parked near the loading dock. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. The car was facing away from us, toward the dead end of the alley. I could see the silhouette through the rear window. A person, still, hands on the wheel, or close to it. The car's engine was off, lights off, just sitting there. I looked at the car more carefully now. The shape wasn't quite right. The taillights were different, slightly wider, set at a different angle than Danny's Civic. It was a dark sedan, similar size, similar profile. Close enough under one utility light at 60 feet. Not close enough for daylight, or for anyone actually looking. We turned around. Didn't run. I wanted to, but the alley was dark behind us too, and running felt like something that would make noise, draw attention, trigger a reaction. We walked steadily back the way we'd come, toward the fire door. The fire door had closed behind us. No exterior handle. It was a fire exit, one direction only. We kept moving, past the door, toward the west end of the alley, which opened onto the side street near the venue's main entrance. People were still filtering out of the show. Clusters of concert-goers on the sidewalk, cars pulling away, voices and phone screens in motion. We came out of the alley into all of it, and neither of us looked back. I called Danny from the sidewalk. He picked up immediately. His voice was tight in a way I'd never heard from Danny, who is the calmest person I know, who once had his apartment flood and responded by putting on rain boots and making coffee. He told us what happened. He'd walked to the car after leaving the venue and found the driver's side window smashed. Glove compartment open. The center console had been rifled through. His phone charger was gone. A jacket from the back seat was gone. The registration and insurance papers with his home address were gone. And the notebook from the console was gone. The notebook with our names, our phone numbers, his parents' number. All of it. His phone was still in his pocket, but the battery had died while he stood there looking at the damage. He'd walked to the nearest open business, a coffee shop on Mercer, and asked to plug in. It took about 15 minutes to get enough charge to send Reese that text. During those 15 minutes, someone used the information from the notebook to contact me. They knew my number. They knew Danny's name. They knew the three of us were at a concert and that Danny had left separately, and they knew the car window was smashed because they were the ones who'd smashed it. The text claimed Danny's phone had been stolen, which explained the unfamiliar number. In reality, Danny's phone was in his pocket the whole time, just dead. They couldn't have known that. They'd taken a calculated chance break into the car, take the notebook, send a text from their own phone claiming to be Danny, and hope that Danny couldn't reach us first to contradict the message. Danny's dead battery gave them exactly the window they needed. Not because they'd planned it, because they got lucky. Reese and I walked to Mercer and found Danny in the coffee shop, sitting near the outlet, looking hollowed out. We sat there for a while, not saying much. Then we called the police. 2 officers came. We showed them the text from the unknown number, explained the alley, described the car. One officer drove over to check. He radioed back that no vehicle was parked near the loading dock. It was gone. Whoever had been sitting in that car had driven away in the time it took us to reach Mercer. Danny's Civic was still in its original spot, 3 blocks from the venue. Broken window, nothing else disturbed. One officer said the area had seen an uptick in car break-ins targeting concertgoers, but the text message element was something he hadn't encountered before. He documented everything, gave us a case number, and was honest that without a plate or a clear description of the person in the alley car, there wasn't much to pursue immediately. Danny got his window replaced the next day. We all changed our phone numbers within the week. I went over the timeline so many times I could recite it in my sleep. The break-in probably happened during intermission, the 20-minute window when the streets around the venue were noisiest, when a smashed window wouldn't draw attention. They found the notebook. They had our numbers, our names. They knew they'd broken into the car of someone attending the concert. They knew the show would end soon. They sent the text to my number, used Danny's name, referenced the smashed window, the one detail they could be certain of because they'd caused it, and gave us a location. A dark alley with one way in and a dead end, far from the crowd. And then they parked a dark sedan that looked enough like Danny's in that alley, at the right distance, under the right kind of light, and waited for two people to walk up to the driver's side window and lean down to talk to someone they thought was their friend. If Reese hadn't gotten that text from Danny's real number, if Danny's phone had taken 5 more minutes to charge, we would have walked up to that car. That's not speculation. We were 40 feet away and still moving forward, 40 feet and closing. About a week later, Danny got an envelope in the mail. Plain white, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, our 3 old phone numbers written in handwriting that wasn't Danny's. Nothing else. No message, no threat. His home address had been on the registration papers taken from his car. Danny moved that spring. Reese and I helped carry boxes. None of us said why. Some nights I'm lying there and I see that alley, the one light, the dark car, the silhouette behind the wheel, and I measure the distance 40 feet, and I think about the version of the night where Reese didn't check his phone, and we kept walking, and we got to the window, and we leaned down. And the person in the driver's seat looked up. 5 nights out, a birthday, a date, an after-work celebration, a graduation, a concert with old friends. Every one of them started with something people do every weekend without a second thought. And in every case, the danger didn't arrive from outside the evening. It grew from inside it, assembled from overheard names, unlocked cars, visible phone screens, and the ordinary trust we extend to strangers because refusing to feels paranoid. If you've ever been out and something made you leave early, change your route, or look twice at someone you couldn't quite explain, that instinct is worth listening to. If you want to share that experience, leave it in the comments. Sometimes putting it into words is how you finally understand what you were feeling. Subscribe to Mind After Dark. We'll be here next week. Stay aware and get home safe.